Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Plug in Play podcast. This is episode 45, and we have a lot of great stuff for you in this episode, ladies and gentlemen. We got Microsoft increasing prices on Game Pass by 50% in this economy. I made that exact same joke in the last episode, and it's still relevant. We have EA being bought out by the Saudis. What a good time it is to be an American. We have, of course, Ubisoft canceling a racist, maybe, buzzword, Assassin's Creed game. And then, of course, we have Impressions. Impressions this week, very hot off of the presses. Ghost of Yotei. I'm going to be giving you my impressions, my initial impressions, about quarter of the way through the game of Ghost of Yotei. We'll see. I'm a diehard Sucker Punch fan. So, see what I think about their newest title, Ghost of Yotei, alongside Dreams of Anther, from the director of Pixel Junk Eden. Thank you very much to Pirate PR for sending me that code. I had exclusive access to this game before release, and I will be talking about it. Hear my opinions later in the show. But this is the Plug and Play podcast, where your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes nobody asked for. And we got some good housekeeping to get to. We've done a lot recently. Specifically, I can finally say, why don't you like, comment, and subscribe? Also follow on all the platforms. I'm used to just saying follow because I've only been on, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to. But now I'm on YouTube. That's right, you can be listening to me on YouTube, where most podcasts are listened to for some reason, even though it's a video platform. And, of course, now we're on Twitter or X, whatever you care to call it, TikTok, Instagram. We're all Plug in Play Pod 1. If you want to follow us, I'd certainly appreciate it. We do short content now, which we'll be getting into in a little bit. I'll be talking about that in a minute. And if you'd like to be a part of the show, you can email us at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. That's in the description if you can't remember it. And while you're down there, there's some timestamps. Why not? You can skip around to whatever you want to see or hear about. If you don't like something I'm saying, you can get past it. If you want to hear something I'm talking about more, you can just go directly to it. It's a labor of love. I do it for you. But let's get into a few things, people. This is an interesting episode. One, I'm recovering from strep. So good to be a podcaster and having strep throat. So if it sounds a little groggy, if it sounds like I'm clearing my throat a little bit, it's because I am. Still kind of getting over the sickness, the illness. Makes it hard to talk. But I do it for you. I love doing it. So I'm going to keep on trucking through. In the process of doing that, I'll also be out of country by the time you hear this episode, and by the time the next episode goes live, I will be in Italia, or as if you're not in the know, that's Italy. But one of the first times that I've kind of had to go ahead and advance the content, so I had to come up with a new episode. We've already recorded it. We've made a Game of the Year episode, Games of the Years episode. So we're going to go through all of the Games of the Years for the past decade and predict what the Game of the Year this year is going to be. Should be a fun episode. I love that conversation. We've already cut it up into shorts for you, specifically, but it's going to be fun. Hopefully it'll kind of tide you over while we wait for me to get back in country and then record the 4 weeks that I'll be gone without having covered news or impressions, so that will be interesting. In the past couple of weeks, I've been working very, very hard, as I kind of have mentioned a couple of times, setting up a Twitter, setting up a TikTok, setting up an Instagram, and trying to turn those into short-form content to try and grow the podcast. I have a friend that's a local influencer here, and he's a video game influencer, funny enough. And I'm like, yeah, he can do it. If he can do it, and he gets free stuff from frickin' Square Enix and all these other companies, I'm just like, if he can do it, I can do it. I just got to get a few thousand followers. How hard is that? It's probably pretty hard, but somehow I thought I could do it. So I've gone through the whole process of not only setting up social media, but also trying to find a way to turn the podcast into short form content. I personally don't like showing my face on the internet. There's a reason I'm a podcaster, and not anything else. And so I was like, okay, well, how can I get around that? And it's like, well, why not AI? I feel like that's a pretty good way to do it. So if you go on any of the short form content sites, check it out, you'll see not me, but an AI avatar. And I'm very proud of him because I asked ChatGPT, I said, ChatGPT, generate an image of the ultimate gamer god. And the first image that it returned was just a generic white man in a beanie. And I was just like, I mean, maybe you're right. But that just does not seem like the ultimate gamer god to me. And so I said, okay, well, show me the ultimate gamer god, but if he ate a lot of Doritos and Mountain Dew, and that, whatever you see, I will keep it as a surprise because I can't really describe it very well via, a podcast with words. Words wouldn't do it justice. But whatever the result was what my new avatar is. And I think it's perfect. I think it's a wonderful avatar for somebody to spout gaming opinions out at people on the internet with. So I've been putting that up, trying to figure out how to get that active and up. I have been very upfront with the fact that I am an AI avatar, even though AI is getting scary, people. It's getting real scary. It looks really convincing. I'm using a generator called HeyGen. Just allows me to put some audio with a picture, and it basically just turns the picture into a video using the audio. And it really does look like some dude is like legit talking to you. Interaction with it has been mostly negative. It is the internet. So, I kind of was expecting that in a way, but it's really disappointing. I'm putting all of these clips out there that are like, this whole thing is just to allow me to talk to people about video games because I don't get to do that very much and have a conversation about video games. And so when I go on, my engagement on TikTok has been really good, but it's all people commenting the same thing, which is AI slop. I've been given about 5 to 10 comments on the videos that I've posted, and all of them just say AI slop, which I don't know. I think that's a little harsh. It's really just me having, would you call a VTuber AI slop? I don't know. It's just a way for somebody to not show their face on the internet. They just don't want to show their face, so they do something else. It's not like I'm trying to like a VTuber. It's not like I'm trying to portray myself as something far more appealing than I am. I'm trying to portray myself as a really nerdy loser dude, which I am. But it's so defeating. It's I feel like I get it. I understand why some people are upset with AI and how it's kind of taking over social media, and you can't go 5 feet without tripping over an AI video. I get that. I'm totally there. I experience it daily. But the content itself is not AI. The content is me and my opinions. It's not the AI avatar, right? The AI avatar is just a means for me to communicate through. So I don't know. I feel like it's not really, a lot of people are like, well, you don't want to use AI art because you're putting AI artists out of, or not AI artists, but putting artists out of work. And it's if I wasn't doing this, I would just be showing my real face, which would not take away an artist's job. That's kind of how that would work for me, I think. So I feel like what I'm doing is probably the least egregious usage of AI you possibly could do. So I don't know. I think it's just people are now predisposed to just assume, if you're using AI, it's garbage. And I don't know, especially TikTok really doesn't like that. The TikTok audience is really against AI. So forewarning, if you ever try to post AI content of any shape or form on the socials, stay away from TikTok, I guess. But anyway, it's been an interesting ride. an interesting thing I'm having to deal with. So anyway, just thought you'd all want to get an update on that and how that's going for me. And hey, come and join us because it's a growing process. We're just now starting it out. It's very interesting to deal with. So let's get into the news, ladies and gentlemen. It has been some very big news stories over the past couple of weeks. Specifically, starting off, Xbox Game Pass increasing by 50%. Yikes, Rooney. Let's go through these stats here. Xbox announced Game Pass Ultimate is increasing from $20 a month to $30 a month. Obviously, a 50% increase, which is insane. Also adds Fortnite Crew, which is a $12 a month value, and Ubisoft Plus Classics, which is an $8 a month value. That's a $20 value, obviously, added off the jump with this increase that's only $10. So one could argue that is getting your money's worth, and that's what Xbox would argue. We'll get into that in a second, because it's worth noting that there's been a few other tiny adjustments here. We have Xbox Game Pass Standard is now Game Pass Premium. No price change there, along with Xbox Core is now Xbox Essential. Also, no price increase. There was, however, a price increase for the PC Game Pass model, which was $12 and is now $16.49, which is an interesting one, interesting number to choose for that, I suppose. But there is a couple of other minor things going on here. They're kind of changing the way the point system works. So if you didn't actually know this, and I don't utilize this I am a Game Pass subscriber, and I don't utilize this at all. If you play enough games, you earn points, and you can turn those points in. Apparently, it's like, well, now you can't really turn the points in for a subscription. You have to turn it in for a gift card, and then you can turn it in for a subscription. Very minor things, but it just makes it a little bit more cumbersome. I believe that standard now, you have to, I think it always has been, you do get access to the day one games. They're just a year after. I think now the main change they made there is you cannot get Call of Duty after that year end period. So you no longer have access to Call of Duty on Game Pass Standard is essentially my understanding of it. This was an interesting one for its initial rollout. There was so much misinformation around this. I'm still kind of learning, like doing my research. I heard people say you no longer were going to get Game Pass. You're no longer going to get Call of Duty with Game Pass, which is just wholly inaccurate. You're no longer going to get Call of Duty Day 1 with Game Pass, which is still inaccurate. Ultimate will still get it. That everything was increasing. That's not accurate either. Only 2 of the tiers are increasing. It was just kind of all over the place. People were really freaking out about this. Here's the main thing. Ultimate, which is undeniably your best deal, your best bargain, where you get Game Pass or Xbox, every game Xbox makes, for free or as part of your subscription day one, which is an amazing deal, always has been an amazing deal, is now $30 a month. Wow. Yowza is, I think, the best word to describe this. That means you're paying $360 a year to be a part of Game Pass Ultimate. They really tried to do their best to try and make this sound a lot more palatable. They were like, well, like on Game Pass Ultimate, you really get like $10,000 worth of value out of the subscription. So this is a really good deal. And it's like, if you just wanted to buy the day one games that we've come out with, it would cost you like $550. So that's still a really good deal. And it's like, yeah, but who is legitimately engaging with all of the content on Game Pass? Like, nobody has that time and nobody has that interest, right? $10,000 worth of value is fantastic, but I am not interested in playing the Bluey game. That's cool that it is on there, but like, it's not going to be for everybody, right? And then who even wants to engage with every single Game Pass day one game, right? I mean, it's like, I'm a big Game Pass guy. I've been a devout kind of Game Pass praiser for the past several years because of its price point and affordability. And it's, like I didn't play Avowed. I had too much stuff going on. I didn't have time, especially recently. I haven't had really a lot of time to engage with Game Pass. So like $30, it used to be like, oh, well, if it's $12 a month, like when it first started out, if I didn't get around to playing something on Game Pass, that's really okay because it's just $12 and I know I'm going to make up my money for that the next time a game comes out because I'm going to be able to play it, and then it's $70 I would have returned. So it would have easily made my money back as soon as I play any any day one Game Pass game. It makes total sense, right? Now, if I miss a month, it's like, well, that's $30. That's a huge chunk of change for just like not engaging with the service at all to just be throwing away. And if I maybe don't like a game that Xbox is producing, if I'm not interested in one of the games that they put out for day one, that's really a bad deal. Like if I didn't really want to have a lot of time with Doom, and I didn't really play a lot of Doom the Dark Ages this year, that's one of their big tentpole releases, and I didn't want to play it, like, well, that's a massive hit for me to not engage with that. And that kind of rolls into that over and over and over as months continue. So it just it makes Game Pass this thing where it's like, well, really, you should just kind of subscribe for a month when there's a game that you're interested in and then unsubscribe. And that's not what any subscription model wants. Subscription models are based off of continuous and guaranteed revenue. They want you to subscribe and completely forget that you're a part of these memberships. So, even if you're not getting like a real monetary value out of it, you're still there and you're still guaranteed money for this company. That's how Netflix works. It's how Hulu works. It's how all these things work, is they get you in for a nice price or for like a singular show, and then they expect you to just kind of stick around and pay up, however much those monthly subscriptions are. Xbox was working the same way. I thought that this was going to be, the Netflix of video games, and it seems to be Xbox is doing everything in their power to absolutely destroy this vision that they've had. Genuinely interested to see how the analysts are going to be looking at this. Even the co-founder of Xbox has come out and been very vocal in saying that this specific move of the price increase to $30 a month is destroying the Xbox brand. This is probably the most backlash, the most vitriol I've seen around an Xbox move in a very, very, very long time. And this was kind of widespread to a point where the page where you unsubscribe from Game Pass, like the subscription page for Microsoft, went down. And that could have been Microsoft intentionally doing that. Highly doubt it. I think it was probably a large number of people trying to unsubscribe and cancel their subscriptions. And that's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. And even I have, the way I do my Game Pass is on Black Friday every year. I buy a year's worth of Game Pass because, it's typically on discount, and specifically Dollar General. If you ever go into Dollar General for anything other than a gallon of milk, actually has really good deals on Black Friday for PlayStation gift cards and Xbox Game Pass gift cards, which they actually started making a lot harder to do, and putting caps on because people were apparently just stealing them and then selling them on the black market. Apparently, that's what the Dollar General people told me. But anyway, it's really good deals. So I'll just buy about a year's worth of it, and then I'll just kind of bank it, and I'll just let it sit for until I need it. And now I'm kind of looking at this and I'm like, well, this year, it's probably the least I've ever gotten out of Game Pass in terms of value, in terms of games that I'm interested in. They're really trying to push next year is going to be the big year where we're really going to have a lot of big releases. It's really hard for me to believe Microsoft at this point, where a lot of the games that they're coming out with are not very good, or they're getting delayed, or they're, in limbo or canceled. A lot of games recently have been canceled by Xbox. What looks like to me, this is not Phil Spencer. This is Phil Spencer's baby. This is what he kind of staked his entire career on. This was his big move as head of Xbox. I cannot see a world where Phil Spencer said this is what we need to do. This is completely against what I think he's been pushing for years, and what he essentially tanked Xbox as a video game, as a video game entity. He completely destroyed it and turned it into essentially a publisher of Game Pass, of games and Game Pass. And it seems like this is a move from the higher-ups. This is Satya Nadella looking at Xbox and saying, we are bleeding money from Game Pass. There is no way we cannot just let this continue, or we can't just let this continue. We need to start extracting more revenue from the current user base, because everything we're hearing from analysts all across the industry is video games have peaked. We have a maximum number of users at this point. We're having a difficulty kind of bringing people into the video game fold. Not as many people are adopting video games as much. If anything, numbers are slightly trickling downwards. And so what do you do when you're a business and you've realized that you've saturated your market? You start extracting more revenue from the current users of your market, and that's what we're kind of looking here at. Like their subscriber growth stagnated a long time ago, way lower than what they were expecting. They continue to say that it's profitable, but it's like objectively not. And like even crazier is at this point, with this price point, it is more profitable for them to sell a game on a third-party platform than it is for them to sell you a subscription to Game Pass, which is their entire business model. For instance, if I bought Doom: The Dark Ages on PlayStation day one, they would get like $45 from me. It is a 33% markdown, I guess, from if that's the way to say it. It's a 33% expense to put your game on another platform. You give them 33% of every purchase sold, even like microtransactions and subscriptions and stuff. So like Doom: The Dark Ages would essentially give Sony like whatever $25, and it would give Microsoft $45. A month subscription is now $30. It makes more math sense to just sell me the game on PlayStation and for Microsoft to essentially become a video game publisher, which is insane. Like costs after buying Activision, I think higher-ups are looking at that and saying, hey, we spent literally billions of dollars, the largest video game / technology acquisition of all time, buying Activision, and we're not making a whole lot more money, and we're putting millions and millions of dollars into just feeding these beasts to stay alive, pay their employees, all that other stuff. Why are we not making way more cash on this? We need to change some things around. And then Microsoft as a whole is moving away from video games. It's clearly moving into more of an AI focus, which, they're needing money to feed that beast. So, like, this is a move to extract more revenue from devout followers. You are being punished if you are a devout follower of Xbox, because basically their parent entity is trying to subsidize this business or subsidize their main business with this one. So hard to really defend this. From a consumer standpoint, I'm going to be objective, okay? I'm going to be real nice, and I will say that Game Pass Ultimate is still a bargain. Here's the thing. So they have sweetened the deal. They said, hey, Fortnite Crew, Ubisoft Classics. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. No shot. Anybody who cares about Fortnite Crew and like wanted a Fortnite Crew subscription just doesn't already have that. Like, there is no shot anybody on Xbox that's like, oh, dude, I play Fortnite every day, and I would really love to get a Fortnite Crew subscription, but I'm just not going to do that. Like, I don't think that person really exists. I think if you're in Fortnite that much, if you care about getting a Crew subscription, you're already in on that. Like, you've already probably anteed that up. Ubisoft Classics is probably one of the least value-intensive things you probably could have added to a service, mainly because Ubisoft is famously known for not like keeping the value of their games high at all. If you don't buy a game from them after like 6 months, that thing is going to be half off. Like, it's an easy thing to just sit around and wait on a Ubisoft game. And then if a game has been out for like 5 years, bro, you can get that thing for like I don't know, $3 to $5, and you'll own it. You won't have to be bought into a subscription service and probably play it through a player that Ubisoft has and have an extra app for that. I've never engaged with Ubisoft Classic, so I don't know how it works, but I assume that's what you'd have to do. And then, if you ever are not paying for the subscription and you want to go back to it, you will have to pay to own the game or pay to go back into the subscription, which is $8 a month. It makes no sense. Because Ubisoft Classics, because Ubisoft and as a publisher devalues their games so much so quickly, there is no reason for you to have a Ubisoft Classic subscription. If you really care about these games, you should just buy them for $3 on Steam, or really any platform, not just Steam, but any platform will have these deep sales like that, and you should just buy them. And that would be, you don't have to have a Ubisoft Classic subscription. But I guess, hey, it is a value. But if we want to objectively look at this, if you have a Game Pass subscription, you can still get a lot of value out of this. It's just like what Microsoft is saying. They're not lying. It would be a few $100s more if you decided to, buy all of the games that come to Game Pass a la carte. Totally. Completely agree with that. Here's the thing. You have to be so deeply entrenched in the Microsoft ecosystem and the Xbox ecosystem to get that value, right? If you are playing on the Switch, if you're playing PC, if you're playing PlayStation, if you're playing a combination of those things in whatever order at all, you are probably not going to be engaging wholly with Game Pass, and if you're not, you're just not going to be getting the same value. I consider myself a hardcore gamer. I do engage with Game Pass. I do have a Game Pass subscription, and I am sitting here being like, I don't have the time. I don't have the time to engage with Game Pass as much as I would need to. There are games on other platforms that I would rather be engaging with. I'd rather be playing Ghost of Yotei. I'd rather be playing Death Stranding 2. These are games that are not on Xbox and will not be on Game Pass anytime soon, if ever. Why would I engage? Why would I be fully dedicated to the Game Pass ecosystem? That doesn't make any sense. There isn't a good reason for you to be engaged with the Xbox ecosystem. They are making prices for these consoles increased. So even getting in at like an Xbox level, like a console level, you're being punished. It is not worth it if you're casually checking this service out. You only are really going to get the value if you come in maybe for a month. And at that point, genuinely, if you know you're going to like a game, if you're a big Doom head and you know you're going to love Doom the Dark Ages no matter what, just buy it. Buy it for $70 on release. You will own it forever. You will not be tied to a month of playing it on Game Pass. You will be able to play it for the rest of your life because you own a copy of it. There is no reason for you to be tied to an ephemeral subscription service that will make that product vanish as soon as you don't pay for it anymore. Like it's a bad deal, right? So this is I can only say this is killing Xbox. Like it seems that this is Xbox almost throwing in the towel. This is a white flag of we are beholden to our corporate heads, our executives, and they are looking at this and they are saying, even though we are coming out and saying everything's peachy, we're making money. We're clearly not making enough, because if you were making money, you wouldn't increase the price by 50%. You would just keep everything the same. I mean, like that's your mouth saying one thing and your actions are saying another, right? I mean, that's obvious. So I think anybody with eyes can tell, anybody who is actively looking at this in any kind of thoughtful capacity can tell. Game Pass is not doing as well as Microsoft wants it to. This is a move that is counterintuitive with growing the Xbox brand. So is increasing console prices. They are making more money off of selling games a la carte on other platforms. All these things added together. This is a move that is, I think, Xbox as a publisher is saying, Game Pass is not a good idea. Xbox hardware is not a good idea. We're just going to have to be a publisher because that's making way more money, which is crazy. It's crazy. I think, Game Pass was an interesting idea. I think it was a consumer-friendly idea. This will not be the last, price increase for Game Pass. That's just how these services work. And I don't even think with this price increase, they're going to be making. I mean, they may actually be making more money. If you really do the math, they have to lose a third of their subscribers in order. Like if more than 1/3 of current Game Pass subscribers cancel, then they will actually have lost money on this deal, right? Because they're increasing the price by 33%. It's technically a 50% increase, right? But it's a 33% overall increase. So from 20 to 30, $10, which would be 33%. So if they lose 33% of their base, then they're losing money. But do you really think that 1 in 3 people are going to be canceling Game Pass over this? I don't think so. I think a lot of them are still going to be hardcore Game Pass subscribers no matter what. They're still these, devout Xbox gamers, and they're probably not. So, they're probably going to continue to make more money off of the devout base than losing with this move. So, from a business perspective, this is a golden goose kind of move, I think they're not looking long term. This is clearly a short-term move to extract the most revenue out of the current user base. It'll piss off everybody. It will prevent people from subscribing long term. It's a weird move. It's a sad move, and I think honestly very disappointed. Very disappointed overall because I was rooting for this. I think it's a good move for the consumers, for the industry. It's still possible that this could be something, maybe with an ad tier that's free or something I would still be actively engaging with. But this just, without Xbox, it makes PlayStation this juggernaut that really doesn't have any competition. I mean, I know technically Nintendo is a competition, and technically Valve is competition, but those two are in such different camps and appealing to such different markets that people never actually compare them as competitors. It's always been Xbox versus PlayStation, and this is just a PlayStation market now. It's just kind of your go-to for third-party software, for, AAA exclusive titles. That's where you're going. And it's sad because that means PlayStation is just going to start doing whatever the heck they want. And I think PlayStation is already kind of doing that. And that's why competition is just generally much better for everybody. But yeah, sad day and a crazy day. I think a lot of people are really jumping on this one with the anger, the big flashy thumbnails and such. But, I think it's no good for anybody. It's no good for anybody, and it's really bad for the Xbox brand. And that's my take. Was that different than anybody else's? Probably a little bit more rational, but I think everybody's kind of in agreement on this. It just sucks. Next, speaking of sucking, EA acquired by Saudi Arabia for $55 billion in a private buyout. So Saudi Arabia is a little bit of a misleading thing. So, not really Saudi Arabia, but they were bought out by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners. So, to kind of break that down, Silver Lake is the easiest one to describe. It is just kind of your generic, Silicon Valley PE firm. They just kind of buy up and take up stakes in a lot of tech stuff. It's nothing new. So pretty natural. Affinity Partners is Jared Kushner's private equity fund. So if you don't know who Jared Kushner is, he is Ivanka. Ivana, I think, is Donald Trump's wife. Ivanka is Donald Trump's daughter. So he's Ivanka Trump's husband. So Donald Trump's son-in-law. He is kind of in charge of that, and he is I mean, this is their very minority stake here. This fund is known to be very small, at least comparatively to the other funds in this particular deal, specifically the Saudi PIF fund here, or the Public Investment Fund, which he is kind of known for having the keys to the Middle East. Much of the Middle Eastern deals, Jared Kushner's kind of involved in, and he's probably the reason that the Saudis are in this at all, and probably this deal happened, right? So getting into the numbers, so $55 billion, obviously very big. EA, very big company, Fortune 500 company. If you didn't know, yeah, EA is a Fortune 500 company, and EA stockholders will receive $210 a share in cash, which is a $25 premium on the company's last unaffected share price of $168.32, and a premium on its all-time highest share price of $179.01. Andrew Wilson will also remain as the CEO, kind of an unusual situation there. Normally the CEO steps down after these deals, but he'll remain. So what that means is this is a money deal, baby. We getting money. This is capitalism at its finest. Everybody loves a good payout, and it is the job of the CEO to say, this is our best deal. This is how we're going to maximize, cash value to the shareholders. And yeah, a 25% premium on the stock is massive for a company like EA. I'm trying to think if that is. I mean, it's a really good deal. I mean, there's no denying it. This is something that you really can't get around. Is if this came to any company, some company said, "I'll buy you out for 25% more than what you're worth," you take it. You take it and you run. It's a really good deal. I think EA still has a long way to go in terms of profitability, and I don't mean that in terms they're not profitable, but they have, in recent years, had issues, or specifically the last year, they were a little under what they were hoping to be. EA Sports Club, I believe is their soccer game, was a little under revenue. It wasn't doing as well as they were hoping. Obviously, Dragon Age: The Veilguard underperformed significantly. So they made a little bit less, but I don't think this is unrecoverable. Some people were pointing at that and saying, oh, EA didn't do very well last year, and therefore that's why they have to sell out. And I don't think so. I think this was an easy recoverable kind of situation. I think EA is still doing very well in general. So this was just we were approached with a really good cash deal, and we can't say no because that's just a really, really good deal. To get into a little bit more of the Saudi Arabia's involvement, the Prince of Saudi Arabia. So this is, you're like, okay, what does Saudi Arabia want with this video game company? Well, if you didn't know, Saudi Arabia is known for primarily, kind of having a lot of money in oil. They try to diversify a lot of that money, and a lot of how they've been doing that, because eventually they're going to run out of oil. Oil is a finite resource, so they're going to run out, and they kind of know that. So they've been trying to figure out how to deal with that for years. Their answer is to buy stakes in a lot of other things and diversify. Some of the things that they've invested in are Nintendo, 2K, SNK, and now EA. A lot of times that's a minority share. SNK they bought outright as well, but this is EA being fully acquired. A lot of people are, I should also say that the Saudi Prince is also known to be a huge nerd. I, as an investor, I do invest in some video game companies just because I love video games and I believe in video games. But I think it's probably not the best thing you could invest in. You probably could find better investments for your money. It seems to be that the Saudi Prince is he's a very big gamer. And so he is personally invested in buying these brands in these companies because he loves video games, which is great. If he didn't murder journalists and stuff, that's probably really cool. And I'd like, to chill with him and talk about how much he likes, I don't know, frickin' video games. But, that's probably not cool because he's also, kind of has a history of humanitarian violations. But, it is what it is. And that's why I think a lot of people are concerned about this. They see this and they say, look, from now on, if I am buying a game made by EA, I am now giving a large portion of that to the Saudi investment fund, which is, of course, going to fund Saudi Arabia, which is then going to continue to perpetuate these things that I don't particularly believe in. Obviously, they're also known for executing people for being gay, stoning people for being, gay, and they don't like women very much over there, as well as a very common criticisms of their particular politics, you could call it. But, welcome to capitalism. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. If you bought a Nintendo game, you were doing the exact same. I don't think anybody is really saying anything about that. Nobody's like, oh, well, I can't support Zelda anymore because they are owned 20% by the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. It's like, no, I think people are over-exaggerating their, at least in the gaming space, I think they're over-exaggerating their, feelings on this. Similar thing with China. Tencent is invested in half of these companies as well. So if you don't like things China is doing, which you shouldn't, there are certain things China's doing that's not cool. You shouldn't be buying anything with people who are invested by Chinese companies like Tencent. Good luck. Good luck trying to figure this out, trying to moralize it and rationalize it. If you genuinely don't like the Saudis, if you genuinely don't want to support them, fine. I think that you're within your rights to not buy EA games now. I don't think that they will be changing all that much. That was another thing people were kind of concerned about. They were like, hey, I think they're going to start taking out references to gay people and, stuff like that. It's like, probably not. Most of these companies tend to continue to kind of produce the same thing. There's some things that aren't kosher when you're owned by Saudi Arabia, but most of the things are still pretty accurate because these guys are still just interested in making money. But, there's not too many instances where people are like, oh, yeah, well, they just completely made it so that we couldn't do anything we wanted to talk about at all anymore. Kind of a moot point for me there. I don't think that's really going to be an issue. It's really just a matter of, do you want to support what Saudi Arabia is doing? That's where your real fine line is. And I think, personally, you really got to make that call yourself, right? Personally, I don't have a lot of games from EA that I'm interested in. Like, you want to be real? Like, what are they producing nowadays? Nothing that I really care about as a hardcore gamer. I guess Split Fiction was like a big game, but most of their games are big first-person shooters like Apex Legends and Battlefield and sports games. And they're doing really well with those, and they're making a lot of money off of them, but dude, I mean, I don't care about them. Like, I don't really care about playing Apex that much. I don't really care about playing Battlefield all that much. I can easily go without them, and I can easily go without a sports game. I don't really care about them at all. BioWare is like the last studio that they own outright that, I care about. But guess what? They're probably going to be shut down. I don't even think that's like a Saudi thing. I think that's like EA was going to be doing that anyway. I think this is definitely like a final nail in the coffin for BioWare, if there was even a doubt. But like, for the most part, I don't think there was ever a doubt. I think that studio is pretty much dead in the water. But this is a massive shakeup in the video game industry. No disputing that. I think it'll continue to operate pretty much the exact same. But like, it is a matter of trying to figure out where you stand within your ethical consumption under capitalism. Is this a bridge too far for you? And it's up for everybody to decide. That's up to you to really figure out. So, interesting development. We'll see how it shakes out with you and your purchasing decision in the future. Next up, this one is not really news. It is, but it's cool to talk about. I think it's a fun topic. Circana has come out and said more than 60% of players play 2 or fewer games a year. And I want to say at the top here, this does include mobile gamers. So even if we're talking about your mom who only plays Candy Crush or whatever, she's included in this study. So, a couple of fun things here. 18% of players from the U.S. buy a new video game about once every 6 months. 12% buy one every year. 14% of players who buy one or more game per month are mainly responsible for the continued trajectory of full-price games. So essentially what that means is vast majority of gamers are buying like FIFA, or they're just playing Candy Crush, or something like that. It's pretty rare for any gamer to kind of double dip and do much more than that. I think it's pretty shocking for me personally to see only 18% of players buy a video game every 6 months. That's, I mean, it's when you really take a step back and you're like, hey, you know, like, who do I know that plays video games? Probably like everybody that I do know who plays video games probably does like stick to, yeah, I play FIFA. Yeah, I play World of Warcraft. You know, like, yeah, they really don't jump around a lot. And if they do buy a new game, it is probably like once every 6 months, you know, once every 3 to 6 months, something like that. When we're including my mom, who never buys a new game and still plays games on like a mobile device, we're really knocking that statistic down. So totally makes sense. 14% of players buying one or more games a month. I mean, I probably fall into that statistic, but like, even then, sometimes I probably don't. It just depends on if you include like playing a game on a subscription service as buying a game, which I don't think you probably would. So like, I definitely slip out of this statistic every once in a while. But this is coming from Matt Piscatella. He's the big Circana video game guy. And he has a quote here that I found interesting. Why are premium gamepads 149 controller editions, pro consoles, and general rising prices? Because the price-insensitive and affluent players are the ones who are doing more spending as everyone else shifts to more free-to-play games. Yeah, I mean, like, it makes sense when you really take a step back and you look. It's like that's just their way of extracting more revenue from a stagnating user base. Is you appeal to the hardcores who are going to be buying these premium services, these premium devices, and yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for it, but I am a hardcore gamer. Like, that is my hobby. That is, if I have my adult money, as people like to call it, that's where it's going to go. And, you know, into video games. And I think, you know, people can probably be pointed at that in everything. You know, like somebody's going to buy a really expensive thing. If they're a sports fan, maybe they'll buy a really expensive, you know, collector's jersey or sneakers or, you know, like a box seat. You know, it's the same thing. But like essentially what he's saying is this, it's a smaller and smaller percentage of players that are doing that. And, you know, we're really kind of being milked. But again, that happens in every industry. But yeah, it seems to be what the math is saying is gamers, hardcore gamers that are playing all these games are a dying breed. Everybody's shifting to free to play. That's the model. That's where the money's being made. And to kind of prove that, about a year ago, he kind of made another study which kind of supports this, which is 82% of American video game players made in-game purchases within the past year. So everybody's spending microtransactions. This what used to be, and this is just gamers, bro. And I think also hardcore gamers, which are the most vocal, at least in the circles that I'm around, obviously, because I consider myself one as well. Yeah, I mean, we used to say microtransactions are the devil. You shouldn't use that, or you shouldn't buy those. You know, DLC is you know, the worst thing you could possibly ever invest in your life. And here we are, 82%. That includes you and me, baby. Hardcore gamers. That's a lot of us probably spending money on microtransactions. So it's just an interesting note to see where the industry's at, what we're kind of dealing with, and probably where the industry is going to be moving forward with, which is not me. I am not the main audience anymore, and it means my interests are not going to be catered to as much, which is very sad. And my final news story for the episode, Ubisoft cancels Assassin's Creed game where you play as a slave that kills KKK members due to political climate concerns in the U.S. Yikes. Politics. Almost kind of surprised I put this on here because I don't love getting into politics very much on this show, and this is like super hardcore politics-y. So they specifically said not only was it political climate concerns in the U.S., but also the backlash that they received around Yasuke, which was one of the main protagonists, one of the dual protagonists in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Shadows, I believe, was the newest Assassin's Creed. He was a black samurai, and people really got offended because they were like, oh, this isn't real, it didn't really happen, and I genuinely still to this day don't know who to believe there. I saw people say like, Yasuke was really real, and then I saw people be like, well, he was real, but it's really exaggerated how Ubisoft is portraying his involvement in Japanese culture, and it's like, okay, I don't know what the real is here. It's a cool idea. Like, I at least think it's a cool idea to have a black samurai. Some Samurai Champloo vibes for the weebs out there. But, like, it was going to take place in the post-Civil War construction era, Reconstruction era. So you're going to be a slave who moved to the West, and then you had to go back to the South to be a little bit more resistancy and fight the emerging KKK. I saw recently, I was watching the Giant Bombcast, and they were like, yo, I can't believe I would have, like, we really needed this game. They're cowards for not making this game because we really need games where, like, we can kill KKK members. And I'm like, look, and maybe this is a freaking hot take. That's cool, all right? I like games where I kill Nazis. Kill KKK members, bro. I don't give a frick. That sounds kind of cool. Just, in all honesty, the historical context around that. I think was it Civil War? Revolutionary War. Assassin's Creed 3 takes place during the Revolutionary War in America, and I think that's just a cool time period. Like, that's just a cool idea to be a Native American during the Revolutionary War. I think that's cool, and I think it's cool to be a slave fighting back against, the revolution, not the revolutionaries, the Civil War people in, like that as well. Here's where it gets a little bit more complicated, okay, is I am a member of the Deep South, all right? I was born and raised in the Deep South, and it's really annoying to always see. I like to think of myself as not being racist, okay? That's a personal opinion. But it's really annoying to see everyone always guaranteed, I guarantee you, where would this game have taken place? Probably Alabama. Probably would have taken place in Alabama because it's the most racist place in the whole world. And look, I'm not going to say the Deep South doesn't have racism issues, okay? But I don't love it when everyone's the immediate stereotype you get when you're like, oh yeah, I'm from the Deep South, is like one of two things. One, you're racist, and two, you freaking have sex with your cousin. Like, I don't like that, okay? I've never liked that. I went to California once, and I was just like at a ramen bar eating ramen, and the people next to me and I were hanging out, and they were like, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from Alabama. And they were like, oh. The first question they asked me was like, do you guys really have sex with your cousins over there? I'm like, no, I've never met somebody who has had sex with their cousin. Like, I've never met that. I've never even heard of somebody who's done that. So, like, it's very frustrating as somebody who lives in the South to always have to be fighting that. I think from, like, Ubisoft's perspective, it's also really difficult to tell a story about a black person dealing with racism. I think that's what Yasuke was, like he was probably, I'd never played Shadows, and I never really heard anything about it. But like, if I had to assume, Yasuke's story is largely involving, like, I am the only black person here. Like, I think just assume That's what the story is revolving around, at least at some point. And like, guess what? You're gonna have to tell a story about if you're talking about a Civil War era, like a obviously political, like racism heavy story. You're gonna have to talk about freaking race. Okay, so like, I don't trust Ubisoft to tell that story well, and they were going to tell it in a way that's like the most down the milquetoast middle ground, like nobody would be happy, like because they're so scared about offending anybody that nobody would have been happy. It would have just been a freaking match to the fire, right? To the dumpster fire in this case. So if I was an executive at Ubisoft, and I said, we are trying to make a game about a slave fighting racists, I think we should probably just can that, and we have literally all of history and every geography you can possibly imagine in the whole world to choose for an Assassin's Creed game. We don't have to make it about this. Like, we don't have to. And it probably will be a problem, especially after we put a black guy in a freaking Japanese game and people freaked out about it. Clearly, people in the U.S. just aren't ready for this conversation. Like, we're just not ready. They're not ready to talk about it, bro. So let's just not make it. I think that kind of makes sense. I think it kind of, from like a corporate business standpoint of trying to not piss off anybody, yeah, why would you commit to this when you can commit to anything else? Like, it just, I don't know, it makes sense. And it seems like people being like, I'm disappointed in Ubisoft for not allowing me to kill racists. It's like, I don't know, why'd you have to? You know, like, I mean, I get it, okay? Like, I think it would have been cool. But, like, I don't know. It just seems like the fact that they don't want to talk about race is, like, them saying racism is cool, and I don't know if I completely agree with that. I agree the political climate here is kind of freaking crazy, but like that doesn't mean that like them not wanting to do a game about a slave, like a very clearly racist time where like a lot of racism would clearly be referenced, is something they're comfortable with. And like I understand that. Like just even having the KKK in the game at all is probably offensive to some people, not just the people who like want to kill them, and not just the people who probably like the KKK or whatever, but like it's probably just like people just don't want to hear people being racist as frick, you know, and it probably would offend people and probably wouldn't be something Ubisoft wants to touch with a 10-foot pole after what they did with Shadows, which really wasn't that racist. It was just like, you know, different. So, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things that I don't understand why we're all freaking out about it. I think, if anything, it's just cooler to hear that was an idea that they had, because like I said, I like the Native American in the Revolutionary period. I think that's just a cool idea, even though like I don't think Assassin's Creed 3 is like does anything really cool with that idea ever, and isn't a very good Assassin's Creed game comparative to like all the other ones. Like 2 and 4 are easily way better to me than 3. I don't even remember anything about that protagonist. I remember him being really boring, but, you know, it is what it is. It's one of those things. I'm surprised it's that big of a deal to a lot of people, and it's, like, that inflammatory for so many people. Like, let's all calm down. Let's all calm down. That's all I'm saying. Let's chill a bit, because I feel like we're going a little overboard with this whole cancellation of a Assassin's Creed game thing. So, anyway, on to impressions. Great part of the show this time because we have Ghost of Yotei coming in hot. The sequel to Sucker Punch's and Sony's Ghost of Tsushima. One of the games that I really enjoyed, maybe not as much as others. And I have an interesting kind of relationship with Ghost of Yotei as well, considering this was not a game I was like very excited for before it came out. I will preface that I am a very big Sucker Punch fan. So I grew up on Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch's Sly Cooper series was really the series that I first fell in love with when I first started playing games. really kind of encouraged me to stick with the Sony ecosystem, hoping there would be another Sly Cooper game, which there never really was. And then, if we're not including Sly 4. And then they went on to make Infamous, which I really enjoy, one of my favorite series as well. Infamous 2 is a fantastic game, one of my favorite games ever as well. And then they went on to, after Infamous, specifically Infamous Second Son, which is the third Infamous game, they made Ghost of Tsushima, which was really kind of like an Assassin's Creed killer. It was almost kind of funny because for years people had been clamoring for like an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan, and Ubisoft refused to make it, and then Sucker Punch did. And that's what Ghost of Tsushima really feels like, is an Assassin's Creed game, a Ubisoft game in Japan. And there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed the game for what it was. Even at the time, it felt like it was I was kind of moving away from open world games, the checklist kind of games. And recently, I would prefer to stay away from them, mainly because there's such a time commitment and they're all so similar. I've played so many of them. I really don't need them anymore, unless there's a really good reason to, kind of go at them. And in this case, I found the fact that it's just a Sucker Punch game to be my reason. One of the things that I love about Sucker Punch, one of the things I really respect about Sucker Punch, is that I feel like they've always made games better as they've gone. Specifically, they've always learned from their mistakes and addressed criticisms and tried to make their games better. So from Sly 1 to Sly 2, there's a really big jump in quality and how they developed it. Obviously, Sly 1 is one of your more typical, linear, level-based platform, mascot platformers. And then, you go to Sly 2, and it's like kind of open area-esque. There's mission structure. It's really different, and it's a really great game. Both of them are very great games, but that one's even better because of how they really tried to address and evolve the game. Same thing with Infamous 2, is they go from Infamous 1 is clearly kind of a starting point, and then 2 kind of refines movement and story and powers and makes it way more interesting and way better just in general, in my opinion. So now we have Ghost of Tsushima that comes out, and I'm like, okay, Ghost of Yotei. I'm going to go on Media Blackout. I already know I'm going to touch this game because I love Sucker Punch. They're going to prove me right. As a huge, long-time Sucker Punch fan, they are going to make this game so much better. And with that in mind, I am significantly disappointed in Ghost of Yotei. I am looking for this game to be really different from Tsushima, to improve a lot on Tsushima, and it just doesn't. It is more Ghost of Tsushima, and that is not a bad thing. I'm not here to say this game is bad. It's still a good game. It is just in no way an improvement. And even in ways that I see as problems, issues that I had with Ghost of Tsushima, these issues are still there with Yotei. And they haven't really done much to address them. And so I look at this, I'm like, well, it's been 5 years since Tsushima. What have we really been doing outside of making a new map? This game has already been, it's been said that this game was way cheaper. In fact, Sony confirmed it was way cheaper to make than the original Tsushima. And it's like, well, that's because they had the base, they had all the assets and everything kind of figured out for this game. So of course it's going to be cheaper. But why did this game take 5 years to develop if we really didn't change anything? It's more of that. It is still a open world checklisty game in Japan. I find that the story isn't as interesting. I initially started the game thinking it was good, and then I very quickly started roaming the area, started getting upgrades, and I was very addicted to that kind of that sequence of okay, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, I'm going to go there, and then once I had gotten, which by the way, upgrade structure kind of sucks in this game. The initial upgrades that you get for this game are things that you should have been given in the first place. Do a dodge roll. You have to buy that. Get a perfect dodge. You have to buy that. There's a bunch of skills that are, and that's how a lot of these games are honestly designed, but these are very noticeable skills that you should have already had. But anyway, it felt like it was a mandatory thing. I need to go upgrade my character so I can start being good at combat, because Ghost of Tsushima combat will kick your butt, and Yotei is no different. But very, like after I got past that initial loop, I started doing some side quests in the open world, and I was like, oh, these aren't very good. Like, these are fine, but they're really filler, and I think this world isn't as interesting. The story isn't as interesting. You're going around, you're fighting the Yotei 6, but I've met one of the Yotei 6 outside of the initial one that you kill at the very beginning of the game. Spoiler alert, that's how the game opens. But, I've mostly been doing side stuff in the main hub area that you then kind of go off and you kind of approach the Yotei 6 in whatever way you want. That was something that I saw in promotional material that I think was really oversold. They were like, oh, you can go and you can interrogate people and you're going to get info, and then like you're going to be able to, accumulate this info to figure out where the Yotei 6 are. It's like you will have all the info you need to find all the Yotei 6 within maybe 30 minutes of playing the game in an open world setting, maybe an hour. If you just go and you run up to stuff and you start fighting people, you will be given the info to find these people so fast. It was very obvious that they didn't want the player to like be running around aimlessly, and they wanted you to be able to attract. Well, hopefully not, but approach any of the Yotei 6 in whatever way you wanted, in whatever order. So, like, it wasn't going to be like I only have info on this one guy, I guess I'm going to go after him. Like, it was like now I have options very quickly. I guess I'm going to choose the one I want to go after, which is what I did. I chose to probably go after the one that seemed like they wanted me to go after last, which is the one in the Kitsune, the fox in the ice area. But you're supposed to be able to approach them in any way. But, like, it felt very surface level to be like, oh yeah, you can gather info and you'll be able to approach it in any way you want. It's like, yeah, you can, but like the gathering info thing is so bare bones. Side missions, most of them are pretty lame. Very bog standard stuff. There are some side missions that are really cool. Like, I did a side quest that was like I had to infiltrate like a haunted area, and like get an armor from like a ghost general. Like, that was really cool. And I was like, why are all the side missions not like this, where I'm going into a really cool area and I'm interacting with really cool stuff, and like the story is actually interesting. Like, most of the time it was like, there are these bandits and they're attacking me, can you please help? Like, that was your level of side mission kind of fluff you're having to deal with, and it most of the time just was not very interesting to me. The main mission, I'm starting to finally go after a Kitsune. I did basically everything I could in the main hub area that was side content, which is probably why I got a little frustrated with it, because I probably OD'd on it pretty quickly. But I finally started going after the Kitsune, and stuff I was doing was actually cool again. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I was just not playing this game the way I really probably should have. Should have been approaching the main missions a little bit more. But even then, I still think that, the original Ghost of Tsushima's story was a little bit better. I think Jin Sakai is simply a more interesting and likable protagonist than Atsu. I think the political backdrop of like you're having to defeat the Mongols is far more interesting. I don't think that this Ronin story is a bad one. It's just not as interesting. It's a little bit more straightforward and, not as complex as what was going on in Ghost of Tsushima. Not to say that Ghost of Tsushima was like a big, complex story in a way, but it felt like there were bigger stakes. It felt like there was a more grandiose story happening. You're fighting this big force with, the help of armies, whereas in this game it's just you versus like 6 dudes. And it's really not even 6. So I'm about a quarter of the way through the game right now. I normally kind of reserve opinions for when I finish a game, but I know I'm going to be gone for a while. So I want to get my opinions out before I go on a big trip, so I'm not missing the wave of impressions as this game is still fresh and new. I still think the combat is... A lot of people love the combat in this game. I think that there's issues here. A lot of it is weapon-based, so you have to get weapons, and weapons are kind of a rock, paper, scissors. I think rock, paper, scissors is even like kind of generous for this, but like essentially there are certain weapons that counter other weapons. So for instance, your katana is going to be most effective against other katanas. Your dual blades is going to be most effective against pole arms or spears is probably an easier way for most people to say it. I just got like a like ball and chain combo, and like that's supposed to be more effective against shields. So the problem with this is it's not really rock, paper, scissors. There's no strategy in here. It's just like you're just going to be wailing on people, like, and you just can't hurt enemies unless you swap to the right weapon, which is really unfortunate. And it really bogs down the combat and just doesn't make it as fun. You know, it's very much an Arkham combat style, like a Batman Arkham combat style, and a lot of parrying, a lot of beating up on dudes, mashing square, and waiting for openings. But a lot of enemies are going to automatically block you for like ever. Like they won't stop blocking you, which makes combat get really annoying when they just won't. So you have to like sit there and like wait for them to attack you, so you can parry it and then attack them, which is just annoying. I don't love that. I don't like that, you know, like you have to switch to another weapon. And even then, like I was fighting shield dudes forever with my katana because I had nothing else that would be effective against them. So I just had to wail on them with triangle, trying to stagger them so they would drop their freaking shield for like 30 seconds. And then I'm like, oh, I finally got this weapon like 15 hours into the game where I can finally start doing damage to shield enemies. It's just, it feels like we really should have thought this out more. Feels like the combat is just not as evolved as what I would want. This was an issue with the original Ghost of Tsushima, and I was like, surely we're going to find a way to design the combat so that we can utilize these weapons in whatever way you want. I would think the obvious way that I'm thinking off the top of my head is like just make it like a Devil May Cry, where each weapon kind of has its own fighting style, its own pluses and minuses that make it a good weapon or a bad weapon, and you get to choose as a player what's most effective and what's not. And that's not how this is at all. It's like you have, okay, some dudes with a pole arm right there. You have to use your dual blades. If you don't, this fight's going to suck. And, you know, like then you see a guy with a shield and it's like, well, you have to switch to this weapon. Otherwise, this fight's going to suck. And a lot of times that's just something you can't even deal with because you don't have those weapons at the time, because you have to go up and fight the Yotei 6 in order to acquire these weapons. So you only have 2 at the very beginning of the game, or you have 1 at the very beginning of the game, but you can quickly get the second one. And then like beyond that, you kind of have to figure it out and kind of go for what you want. I would not recommend going for the gun at all, because you're just going to continue to have to deal with freaking combat that's annoying, and like makes you have to wail on people you can't do anything against for long periods of time. A lot of the stuff in the open world is still the same. You're still going to check on the same stuff. You're going to a hot spring. You're going to cut some bamboo. There's not really a lot of difference there. It feels like you kind of have to. Look, this is just more Ghost of Tsushima. Is it bad? No. It's a good game. It is disappointing from my standpoint because, yeah, there's still obvious flaws to me. There's still obvious flaws. Not only are there obvious flaws, but this game has not evolved in any way. If anything, it's kind of taken a step back in some ways, like the story, like the protagonist, like the area you're running around in. I don't find Ezo to be nearly as interesting as a particular location. It's kind of a more rural, backwoods island of Japan, so it's not as interesting to me as Tsushima was. It's hard for me to be like, yo, dude, this game is way better than its predecessor, because it's not. It's pretty much the exact same, and that's really disappointing after 5 years. We find this the Ghost of Tsushima was on a PlayStation 4. This game still feels like it should be on a PlayStation 4. Sucker Punch has never been very good with like animations and technical stuff. Like I remember Infamous was infamous for kind of having almost like marionette looking mouth animations. Like people would like their mouths would only go up and down like they were like a puppet, you know, kind of deal. And this game, I'm not going to say is like that, but like the game looks dated in its animations, especially during like not pre-rendered cutscenes. Pre-rendered cutscenes look fine, but everything else not really, in terms of animations. And then going around and I see a lot of, I'm not going to say bugs, but like technical polish, Things are kind of jittery in some places. Things do some weird things every once in a while. It's I'm not going to say it's buggy, but yeah, there's definitely some lack in polish for a game like this. I don't know. I'm not going to say this game is bad because it's not. I'm enjoying myself. Especially when I'm focusing in on the content that clearly had more effort put into it, like the main content. But gosh darn, dude, it's so disappointing. As a Sucker Punch longtime fan who really has kind of doubled down on them being, hey, this is the developer that will learn, that will evolve, that will make things better. This is their first game I genuinely feel like from 1 to 2 is not a step up. It's just the same game. And if you want more Ghost of Yotei, or Ghost of Tsushima, which I was not really clamoring for, to be frank, then this is still a great game. But, like, I don't know. I wanted more. And to say that I won't be satisfied with this game coming out of it on the other end, and this is why I don't like doing impressions when I'm only like 25% of a way through the game, is I could come out on the other end and be like, look, they tie everything up great. I really enjoyed a lot of the missions, so I was kind of down on some things, but they really got better as time went on. Maybe. But right now, I'm feeling a little disappointed in Yotei. Again, not a bad game. It's like an 86 on Metacritic right now. It really probably is like, yeah, I'd give it like an 8.5. If you told me, what do you rate the game right now? I'd say probably like 8.5. It's not bad. But like I was expecting Sucker Punch to really knock this out of the park, and it's really sad that they didn't. And I hope that I have more impressions to come on this and that it gets better. At least my impressions get better as time goes on, and I really hope that will be the case. But for right now, that's all I can really say about it is like it feels too much like a game I've already played from 5 years ago, from half a decade ago, and I was really expecting a lot more, and I'm not getting it. So that's right now what I have. I'm not going to lay that in. I'm not going to lay the law down on that. I'm not going to write that in stone. But that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm hoping it changes. Moving on. Dreams of Anther. This is from the director of Pixel Junk Eden. This is from... I got a code for this one. So very excited about that. About a month before the game came out, Pirate PR, shout-outs to them, sent me a code for this game. This was a game that I saw at the Sony State of Play. It caught my eye. It's a pick from a Pixel Junk developer, so, kind of a known name. And I said, hey, I got to check this out. And, I had the opportunity to, so I was like, absolutely. It's a surreal, dreamlike, philosophical, artsy game. I didn't know much about it, but other than, like, the one trailer I saw at the State of Play when I started it up. And I quickly got an understanding. Very much so. When, I started walking around and, like, inanimate objects would start talking to me and, like, a door, like, the first thing I heard, I was talking to, like, a door, and a door said, like, do doors have eyes on the inside or the outside? And, like, I walked up to a tree, and it started talking to me, and it was like, I wonder if I'm growing up or if I'm growing down. And it's like, oh, frick, I know what this game is. Oh, my gosh. Like, ugh. It kind of like immediately sunk in what I was in for, and the game is filled with that all over the frickin' place. You can talk to so many freaking things, hundreds of items you can talk to, and they will all say something philosophical and abstract, and like that's all this game is. It's like abstract messaging all over the place, and like you really need to have probably been under the influence of some particular drug in order to get the most out of this game. Just gonna say that. The game's marketing and messaging has the central theme as, quote, there is no creation without destruction. This was a cool idea. The game kind of opens with this statement. And I was like, oh, well, I kind of like that. I'd love to see where this game takes it. We'll get to that in a second. The gameplay is focused on this. You play as a man in pajamas, and you have an AK-47, and you walk around like a blurry area, like a pixelated environment, and you shoot everything. And as you shoot stuff, it kind of comes into focus and eventually becomes a clearer image. And you're like, oh, well, that big blurry thing was a tree. And you're like, okay, this is what we're talking about when we're saying destroying to create. in the game's sense, the game takes it to a literal perspective of, okay, you have to shoot stuff in order to make it come alive, which is obviously kind of crazy, but hey, cool idea, right? I had some fun initially like this. It was fun to clean up each scene I was in. Kind of felt like a pressure washer kind of situation, very satisfying to make everything clean and look nice. But then you go to some areas so frequently, and they change so much that I was like, okay, I don't know if I really want to keep doing this over and over and over and over and over again. It's a little repetitive, so I just kind of started running through areas. And the only real incentive to kind of take your time and go through those areas is to pick up collectibles. And the only real emphasis on collectibles is you can turn those in for upgrades. And you're like, oh, upgrades. Sounds like a good time. Who doesn't like a good upgrade? Well, I don't think that system is very well figured out either. You get to use those upgrades to run. Like you cannot run in the game until you unlock that ability by doing upgrades. Upgrades are also like the run is like almost non-existent. You have to continuously upgrade your ability to run. I upgrade it like 3 or 4 times, and even then I was like, I'm really, it's almost frustrating to try and run in this game, because even when I try to run, I can only run for like 2 seconds and then the run stops. On top of that, you can turn in these collectibles for ammo. It is random how much ammo you get. And you get like it for grenades and for rocket launchers, which just more effectively kind of clean up the environment you're in. It's not very, it doesn't really help incentivize you to go through these things when your AK kind of does the job well enough and you're really just trying to get through the areas as quickly as possible so you don't have to continue to do them as much. And that's kind of where this game's whole theme derails, and they completely stop doing anything with the whole theme of destruction begets creation, and this started going off into way more abstract concepts. From the top, you follow the man with the pajamas through 4 different chapters, each of which you're following like a mole, like a group of mole children. I mean, that is literal moles. Who are trying to ring a bell to prove their independence, and they all end up dying. A clown that's trying to sell a theme park to a cynical businessman, a young boy who's trying to play piano to, relive his former memories of childhood, and fish who are trying to escape aquarium, as well as robots who are trying to understand art. None of these are really intersecting with the whole destruction begets creation theme, which seemed interesting to me, and none of them really seemed to be that interesting in the first place. They all just seem kind of wacky and kooky and dreamlike, which is kind of gets grating after a while. The main story, those are kind of like the sub-stories you're filtering through, but the main story is kind of following the man with the pajamas and the reluctant soldier. The game actually opens with a sequence of you playing as the reluctant soldier who does not want to kill anybody, and like they're both kind of together and trying to figure out who they are and understand themselves in this dreamlike world, and you kind of don't know who the man in the pajamas is. It's kind of a mystery, trying to figure out who the man in the pajamas is. Gameplay is more just of a means to an end. It certainly makes the game stand out. It feels comical almost to like run through this artsy world and be shooting with an AK. It just stands out. But like it really almost feels more awkward than anything. After playing the game, maybe a few moments made me think and, do my good thinker stance and be like, pondering what is the meaning of life kind of deal. But like, this is no more than if I had read like a philosophy 101 book. None of these themes seem to be too in-depth and communicated in a way that I think is very good. All I can say is the main theme of destruction begets creation was not ever really explored to the fullest. And like the only times that really happened, like I felt were really off and weren't really well done. Like at one point you're like breaking crayons. You're like doing a flashback as like the man with the pajamas and you're breaking crayons in half. And he's like, I hope I don't get in trouble, but it's the only way to make more. And it's like, I don't know if breaking a crayon in half means you have twice as many crayons. I think you just broke your crayons in half. I don't know if I really agree with that. They also kind of almost imply that like not killing people in war is bad with like the whole analogy they're going with. I don't know. It never really feels like they have a good idea of how they're communicating what they want to. This game I really can only recommend to a very small group of people. Like if you've heard anything I've said and you're like, "Oh, cool, that would be cool to smoke a bowl and chill out and just kind of trip out on all this crazy imagery and messaging," then hey, that's for you. I think this is the only group of people this is for. I cannot say this is for anyone else, not even for like art snobby people. I don't see anybody really jumping in on this. Currently, the game is at Metacritic at a 61. It's very interesting too because I played this game obviously before it came out, and I've never played a game that had trophies before it came out. I've played games on Steam before it came out, but like PlayStation, you get to see the percentage of people who have beaten the game and how far they've gotten and stuff like that. I didn't beat this game, but I got pretty far into it, and I got further than the vast majority of people who have beaten the game up to this point. So, and the only people who would have been those people, I can only imagine, are journalists, which is so funny to think that 87% of players, 13% beat the game. 87% of people who are writing reviews for this game, talking about this game, did not even finish it, which is probably a little bit less than that. Because there's definitely like people who probably pre-ordered the game and have started playing the game, or actually looking forward to it, and who've played it. But most people, at least 50% of journalists who are talking about this game, did not even beat it, which is so funny to me to see a peek behind that Iron Curtain. Or Iron Curtain that's just communism. My bad. Just the curtain. Peek behind the curtain. The man with the curtain. The Wizard of Oz reference that I'm searching for but cannot put my finger on at this very moment. Curtain. But anyways, what that shows to me is there's probably a lot of people who didn't like it, even who were given codes to the game. 61 is a really bad score, and I think that's probably where I would nail this game, is like if I was really trying to be generous, I'd probably give it a 6. It's definitely not a game for me. Again, very, very appreciative that I received a code for this game. But I think I'm pretty much in alignment with what everybody's saying about this game. If not, maybe I'm even a little bit harsher on it. Again, thank you to Pirate PR for the wonderful code, the wonderful opportunity, but this was not a game that resonated with me. And hopefully, maybe what I said, resonates with you, but it did not resonate with me. So, maybe next time, director of Pixel Junkie. Maybe next time, but not for me. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for me. Got a lot going on. Obviously, still recovering from strep. I think we made it okay through this episode, I think. I thought it was a good episode overall, though. A lot of hot takes, a lot of spicy opinions. But I got to go plan for a trip. Got to go pack for a trip. And I hope that, you have a good time while I'm gone. Hope you enjoy the extra episode I have planned. Obviously I have to like dice this episode up into a million different clips and turn those into AI generated, faces, and add subtitles to them, and then schedule them all out so they upload as I'm gone. So lots of work ahead of me, unfortunately. Maybe I'll have time to touch some more Yotei before I leave, but it is what it is. Well, friends, with that, I want to wish you the best. I hope that you play more video games than I do over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully I get to play some, plan on bringing my Switch 2 on the plane. And like the idea is hopefully we don't sleep on the plane, so we can get a little bit more adjusted to the schedule over there. And hoping maybe some Mario Galaxy 2. Sounds like a good time. Catch up on some other Switch games that I have on there that I'm really looking forward to. Pokemon Z to A coming out while I'm out there, so maybe on the way back I'll play some Z to A. But it'll be interesting to see what I get around to. I'm really looking forward to it. The one time I have to play video games is a time I'm trying to like force myself to stay awake on a plane. Ugh. It's not the most optimal conditions to really enjoy your gaming situation, but it is what it is. I will make the most of it, and I will have a good time, as dictated by the wife. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Plug and Play Podcast. I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good video game, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.